Did you know that in Endless Ranks of the Dead, there is a stained glass window being pushed on by a zombie horde, that then, in Shadows over Innistrad, gets shattered in the card Relentless Dead? I think my favorite part of these miniature stories is that they are often illustrated by the same artist, in this case, Ryan Yee. Merch, like, comment, subscribe. Hello, welcome back to Basics, episode number 17, a show where I take EDH commanders and try to find the perfect basic lands to fit them. I love seeing someone sit down with some beautiful basic lands, but something I love even more is seeing how well those lands match their commanders. One quick note before we begin. I'd like to give the artists credit for their artworks, but I may not pronounce their names perfectly. I'll try my best, but please forgive me and correct me if that ever happens. First on the list, we've got Klothys, God of Destiny, from Theros Beyond Death. One thing that stood out to me about this card was how unusually serene for a red and green aligned commander this card is. The wind that pushes her hair is relaxed and slow, making it seem as though this is a still and tranquil day, and that she's been there for a long time. So when looking for basics, I made sure to reflect the low contrast, still scenery and smooth color gradients and forms to match her style. So, I have 3 different land pairings for you to consider. Take a look at this mountain from Theros Beyond Death, illustrated by Sam Burley, that has smooth rolling cliffs on a painted sunny cliffside, and this forest from Theros, illustrated by Stephen Belladin, depicting a grassy clearing studded with poplar trees. The lands from Theros were an easy comparison to make, because of the matching themes of the serene Grecian countryside, along with Theros being Klothys' plane of origin. But moving away from Theros, I wanted to show you some others from different sets across Magic the Gathering history. So take a look at this mountain from the Dual Decks Merfolk vs. Goblins, illustrated by Stephen Belladin, which is actually a reprint from Theros with higher contrast, to match Klothys a little bit better, and pairing it with this forest illustrated by Christine Choi from Kaladesh, that conveys that smooth windy motion present in Klothys' hair and scenery. The sloped stones in the mountain, coupled with the rotating motion of the forest, help to give the pairing a smooth, windy feeling, which I think looks very nice together. And thirdly, I wanted to match colors as best as I could. So we've got this very underappreciated forest from M14, illustrated by Andreas Rocha, and coupled with this mountain from Unsanctioned, illustrated by Rob Alexander. I think the color palette matches up nicely, and their flatness and tranquil nature is a unique aesthetic to use for a dual-colored commander, but it's gorgeous when framed with other cards that communicate the same ideas. Second on the list, we've got another peaceful commander, although for very different reasons. It's Mael of the Anima from Shards of Alara. Her style was communicated very well to me, because the thing that jumped out most to me was the almost mane of flowers around her head as she looks at you. So it felt imperative that there were flowers depicted in the basic lands that matched her. And I found more than I thought that I would, considering there are 3 different basic land types defined for her. But take a look at this pairing from way back in history. This forest from 2nd edition, illustrated by Christopher Rush. This plains, illustrated by Pat Morrissey from 5th edition. And this mountain, illustrated by John Avon, also from 5th edition. Each of these designs focuses on the flowers in them, and all of them have the retro framings and white borders for those people that like the utility of being able to easily fetch them in their decks. For a second pairing, I wanted to show you a set that had modern borders, for those that like those best. So take a look at this mountain illustrated by Joshua Hernandez from Throne of Eldraine, that while it doesn't directly depict flowers, the butterfly spirits dotting the landscape served that aesthetic well. In addition, we add this plains designed by Ryan Pancoast from M10, depicting a field of flowers, and this forest illustrated by Volkan Baga from M12 that depicts a mossy field dotted with those same white flowers. When paired up, they all really convey the flowering nature of Mael, and they reflect the relatively dark background in her as well. But before I move on, I wanted to show you guys one other land for her. However, I was unable to find other matching lands in her color type, so this will be a one-off for you to consider. Take a look at this gorgeous plains from the Asian Pacific Land Program, illustrated by Ron Spears. I feel like if we're talking about flowers in a pairing like Mael, this card needed to be mentioned, even though it is relatively expensive. Up in third today, we've got a fun one. It's General Ferrus Rokirik from Modern Horizons 2. When taken at a glance, this card seems like the quintessential Boros card, with the red sunset wash and General Ferrus Rokirik himself standing proudly backed by a militia of armored constructs behind him. And in addition, he is holding a scepter that has the Boros symbol on it, which shows that he is from the plane of Ravnica. It was a lot of fun to match this one up, and I was able to come up with 5 different pairings for you to look at, starting with lands from his plane of origin. This plains from the Boros Guild kit, illustrated by Yang Hao Han, and this mountain illustrated by Noah Bradley, that communicate the towering power and strong military presence that he displays. I really liked how the borders are matching on this pairing especially. But for these other pairings, I felt like it was more appropriate to move away from Ravnica and try to emphasize the motifs that Rohirric focuses on, specifically the ideas of standing tall, stones, military, and a sunset color scheme. So take a look at this Plains from Dragons of Tarkir, illustrated by Sam Burley, and this mountain illustrated by Adam Paquette from Jumpstart. These lands match the strong, structured, and powerful vibe, while this next pairing focuses on the sunsets over stony landscape scenes. Take a look at this Plains designed by Adam Paquette from Theros, and this surprisingly heroic looking mountain from Theros as well, illustrated also by Adam Paquette. I thought that these matched that sunset color scheme to a T, even though they don't match as closely thematically. However, this fourth concept was more matching of the stony atmosphere, starting with this mountain illustrated by Cliff Childs from M21, and this Plains from Strixhaven designed by Jonas Deroe, that has the remnants of a stone statue in its foreground. I liked how these convey that yellow-orange color, while also focusing on a structured and man-made stone rather than natural stone. And finally, going back to his artwork, I felt drawn to the vertical presence Rohirric gives, standing tall and imposing. So I have one final pairing for you to look at that I feel like conveys the gravitas that he wants to display in game. Take a look at this mountain illustrated by Craig Mullins from the Dual Decks Mind vs. Might, and this Plains from Jumpstart illustrated by Jed Chevrier. I feel like this is my favorite pairing of the bunch, because it conveys the process that Rohirric uses in game, turning stone monuments shown in the mountain into soldiers for his legion in the plains. Fourth on the list, we've got another Ravnican legend. It's Juri, Master of the Review, a commander so intense she almost writes herself. Her harsh yet performative style, coupled with sharpness and fire, communicates that Rakdos guild on Ravnica excellently. So I wanted to find basic lands that match that, starting with the guild kit lands. Take a look at this swamp from the Rakdos guild kit, illustrated by Dimitar Marinsky, and this mountain also illustrated by Dimitar Marinsky from the same set. These honestly match up spectacularly, with ragged, sharp, and heavily silhouetted imagery coupled with that deep red and orange that matches her very well. But for fun, I wanted to show off the swamps and the mountains that matched her color scheme, but were a little bit more reduced and loose in their connection. So take a look at this swamp illustrated by Adam Paquette from the Dual Deck Sorin vs. Tybalt, which is a higher contrast reprint of the Sunrise Swamp from Avacyn Restored, and pairing it with this mountain from Return to Ravnica, illustrated by Richard Wright. I feel like this communicates the sharpness and fiery red color that Juri has in her artwork alongside the burning city to match her lore. But going even more reduced, I wanted to show off this mountain from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, illustrated by Titus Lunter, and pairing it with this gorgeous swamp, illustrated by Bob Ross from the Bob Ross Secret Lair drop. I just felt like the sharp angularity of the cave in the mountain, coupled with the fiery sunset and dead trees in the swamp, matched quite nicely from a visual perspective. However, if you wanted a more budget option, because that swamp is relatively expensive, then take a look at this pairing that is the same Adventures in the Forgotten Realms mountain, just paired with this swamp from M13, illustrated by Mike Birek, that I think communicates those same visuals as well, if not better. And finally, we've got a truly weird one. It's Skeleton Ship, illustrated by Amy Weber and Tom Wannerstrand. Now the thing that makes this card's style so unique is how quirky it is. It has a heavy stroke outline, pastel and relatively flat color palette, and a complex scene arrangement made up of small, seemingly unrelated images, like a flying sea turtle and a dolphin. That makes the whole scene look closer to a series of well-rendered doodles you'd see in the back of a journal or a sketchbook. Now this fun artistic style was relatively difficult to find basic lands for, but there were several options that I could choose from when I focused on individual motifs, rather than all at once. However, I knew that all needed to be with the old border frames because this card was only printed once, way back in Ice Age. So take a look at this island from 6th edition, illustrated by Douglas Schuler, and this swamp from Deckmasters, illustrated by Douglas Schuler as well. I felt like these had the line work and the bright color palette that matched, along with that flat painted aesthetic that matches the artwork nicely. For another style, I wanted to try to mimic the complex whimsy that is present in the Skeleton Ship artwork. And while I don't think I got it exactly, I feel I got close. Take a look at this island from the Arena League 1996 promos, illustrated by Tony Roberts, and this swamp from the Arena League promos as well, illustrated by the same. I felt like these had enough complex foreground imagery, with the nettle trees in the swamp and the roots extending out of the lake and the island, to match the style of things leaping out of the sea in Skeleton Ship. And for a third, I wanted to have a budget option that also had black borders on it as well. So take a look at this island from Invasion, illustrated by Tyrese Nielsen, that has line work, low contrast color shading, and a complexity of imagery that matches it fairly well. And this swamp from Onslaught, illustrated by Doug Chafee, that does the same. Ultimately, all of these three pairings can work, and will make you stand out when playing this unique and stylized of a commander. But there you have it. 5 more commanders sorted for which basic lands I think match them best. But I want to see what you think. Tell me which commanders you'd like me to try and pick up basic lands for. Comment below and let me know, and have a great day.